Hello, hello, hello. So I wanted to do a live stream. I just had this on my mind today. There's two things that I had on my mind today. First is there's been some talk of a Model 3 refresh, a Tesla Model 3 refresh. Rob Maurer talked about it and the Tesla Daily, Tesla podcast, whatever. I heard that Omar Kazi talked about it on Twitter Spaces. And I think it's an interesting idea. I've been thinking that they would refresh them. I don't know about refresh is the right term. So, what is a natural step for Model 3 is to go from how they currently manufacture Model 3 and go to front and rear castings and a structural battery pack, which is something that we've seen happen with Model Y, but it wasn't called a refresh. So, would a refresh be something more than that? And if you look at what happened with the Model S, they saved some weight. They made some changes. They changed the battery pack a bit. But it wasn't really an exterior change. The Model X refresh, there really wasn't an exterior change. One of my friends was talking about how Model 3 needs to be updated. Its look needs to be updated because, there's these new vehicles in China that are more attractive. And I was thinking about that. Model S had its refresh. They didn't really change the look that much of the Model S. So how much are you going to change the look of the Model 3? It's only 5 years old, or 4 or 5 years old. Does it need a refresh? Does it need to look different? I suppose Franz von Holzhausen could come up with some new design and make Model 3 look a little better. But the big change in Model 3 should come eventually as they go to front and rear castings and structural battery pack. Tesla is constantly updating how they manufacture vehicles. They make many, many changes. Hi, Mitch. They make many, many changes to how they make their vehicles. I think Joe Justice said something like 13 changes a week, or I don't know. It's a lot of changes in how they manufacture vehicles to make them more efficient, to make them better. So whether we're going to call that a refresh or not, I don't know. But if you can go to front and rear castings and structural pack and you can save some weight and you can lower manufacturing costs, then Model 3 becomes a higher margin vehicle. Now, that's sort of the issue with Model 3 is because it's more expensive to manufacture because they don't have the front and rear castings. They don't have this. Well, the structural pack isn't big on Model Y yet anyway, but Model Y is heading towards this front and rear casting structural pack, which should be less expensive to produce because there's fewer parts, there's fewer welds, there's fewer robots to make the vehicle, there's fewer laborers needed to make the vehicle, and that brings the cost of Model Y down. Applying the same thing to Model 3, which is a very similar platform, makes a lot of sense. Cutting against that, as Tesla has told us, there's this robo-taxi platform vehicle coming. They're going to redesign the Cybertruck, exactly. They're still redesigning the Cybertruck, I think. But we've got the robo-taxi platform vehicle coming in 2024. And I'm guessing that vehicle is going to be somewhat smaller than Model 3, probably the size of a Toyota Corolla, in that ballpark. And what I wonder is, does the robotaxi platform vehicle cut in at the low end of Model 3 sales, while the Model Y is cutting in at the high end of Model 3 sales? And does it leave a lot of room for expanding Model 3? At some point, does Model 3 become obsolete? Now, I personally love the Model 3. The Model 3 is fun to drive. It's probably the most fun Tesla to drive. It's not the fastest Tesla, but it's the best road feel, I think, of any Tesla out there. So, I mean, maybe Model S Plaid is more fun overall, but I think the Model 3 just feels tighter. I haven't driven a Model S. I don't know if I've ever even driven a Model S. Just the thought. So it's interesting to see whether Tesla, it seems likely if Tesla is going to continue making Model 3 and they make, I don't know, 500,000 a year, and there seems to be ample demand for Model 3, then making a better Model 3, getting the front and rear castings would allow them to lower the price. No, that's not the $25K car. Model 3 will not be a $25,000 car, not with a 75 or 82 kilowatt hour battery pack. Even with a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack, with everything that they're doing, I don't think they can get it down there. They've talked about the robotaxi platform vehicle getting to half the cost of manufacture of Model 3 and Y, which means I think they're going to get that robotaxi platform vehicle down to $20,000. And then maybe you'd sell that for $25,000. And that's not even sufficient margin, right, for Tesla's standard for margins. So And no, I don't think Model 3 is going to be converted into the $25,000-$30,000 car. I don't think that's viable. I think there's a limit to how they're getting the cost of producing Model 3 down, and going to front and rear castings will get it down more. But there's some fundamental limit, given the mass of the car, all the moving parts, all the motors, all the batteries. There's only so low you can get that cost. So I don't think it's going to get down there. I think the idea is that the robotaxi platform vehicle slots in below the Model 3, and I'm just wondering whether having Model Y above and Model 3 below somehow cuts in demand for Model 3. We'll see. And I will say, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I will talk about this. I expect that Tesla is going to change pricing pretty radically starting January 1st, because we have the Inflation Acceleration Act or Inflation Reduction Act. PKLB says front and rear castings on the 3 are different from the Y, right? I think it should be very similar to the castings on the Y. The Y and the 3 are very, very similar vehicles. The Y is slightly larger, but I think the underpinnings of the vehicles are the same. I think the battery packs are the same. So I don't think so. I'm Mitch. I'm going to talk about the phone next. And there's a reason why I think the phone makes sense. I think in the end, it's not going to happen, but I want to talk about the phone next. So one of the things to watch out for is Model 3 and Model Y pricing going into next year, particularly Model 3. Now, Model Y is less affected by the Inflation Reduction Act tax credit because the cap for SUVs is $80,000. And since the Model Y is well under $80,000 under most variants, except maybe if you include FSD, it should be the case that Model Y will not be affected by this. But I do think we might see Tesla say, hey, let's raise the pricing of Model Y. Let's say we're getting a $7,500 tax credit. Let's raise the pricing by $3,500. And then Tesla captures $3,500 of the tax credit. The customer is still saving $4,000 on the car. So on the Model Y side, that's there. With Model 3, there's a cap at $55,000, and I think the long range and performance Model 3s cost more than $55,000. So there's sort of this trap, and they may need to accelerate the front and rear castings to bring the cost of producing Model 3 down, so it's easier for them to sell Model 3s at $55,000 or less. I kind of anticipate that Tesla's going to announce a new variant of the Model 3 that's priced at like $54,900. Doesn't include FSD. You buy the FSD after you get the car. And this version would be probably not a full 350 miles of range or 360 miles of range like the long range Model 3, and not as high performance as that, but slotted in between the standard range Model 3 and the long range Model 3 and priced at $54,900, and maybe you get 320 miles of range. You'll also have like a 70 kilowatt hour battery pack, let's say, or a 70, not a full 82 kilowatt hour pack. They'll have a smaller battery pack. The vehicle would eventually, and then this is a stopgap vehicle until they do the front and rear castings and they're able to genuinely bring the cost of manufacturing down. But again, if you price it at $54,900, then the customer's getting the car for $47,900 or something like that, or $47,400. And if they do it right, Tesla can make more money on the Model 3 and make this the predominant vehicle that they sell. Maybe they continue selling the standard range Model 3, but they raise that price up to like $50,000 or $51,000. So that pushes people towards this other vehicle that generates a bit more money for Tesla. I think we're going to see pricing games like that. None of this will affect Model S and Model X. The only conceivable scenario, there's no way of getting a Model S down under $55,000. That's what you need for a sedan. There's no way of getting a Model X down under $80,000 that I can see. So I don't think they could do that. I suppose they could conceivably make a Model X with a 80 kilowatt hour battery pack, but that would only have like 250 miles of range. I don't know anybody's going to want that. So I just don't see a way of making that work for Model S or Model X. And Cybertruck will be ready soon. And Cybertruck, is going to be priced under 80. Well, I think there's going to be a quad motor that's going to be priced more than $80,000. But dual motor will probably be like $79,900, or maybe the tri-motor will be $79,000. I don't know if they're still going to make the tri-motor, but that's what I think is happening there. And yeah, I think they'll incorporate. They can't use Chinese-made batteries. Maybe the first year they can, but by 2024, I think they have to be shifted off Chinese batteries in order to make it work. So under the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a there they don't the IRA does not like Chinese produced products. So whether that's a trade violation, I don't know. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the rumor of Elon basically inviting the rumor that he might make a phone if Apple kicks Twitter out of the App Store. That would be insane for Apple to do that. For starters, Truth Social is on the App Store. There's plenty of apps on the App Store. Nothing much has changed at Twitter, other than it getting better and then getting rid of child pornography and then reducing hate speech. So it's really far from clear how Apple would make the judgment that they need to deplatform Twitter from the iPhone App Store. If they do that, then Elon has said he'll make a phone. And I kind of wonder, is ED playing 4D chess? Has he already started making the phone? Is the phone coming soon? And he used this as an excuse to start pumping the phone. And I had some ideas about that. Like maybe they just give the phone away with any Tesla. If you own a Tesla, you just get a phone. And the idea is to drive mass adoption because you want to build critical mass for your phone platform. So if you gave it away to every Tesla buyer and even every existing Tesla owner, and it's optimized for the Tesla app and it's optimized for Twitter and who knows what else it's optimized for. And I think we're going to see if I don't think this is going to happen. I just want to be clear. I don't think this is going to happen. I don't think Apple's going to kick Twitter out of the App Store, and I don't think Elon wants to make a phone, or I don't think he's going to make a phone. But I did see, and Starlink doesn't really make sense. The bandwidth of Starlink and the distance from the Starlink satellites to the phones doesn't really make sense. And I suppose if you optimize the phone to work with the Starlink network, would that make some sense? Maybe. But the bandwidth of the entire Starlink network, it just doesn't fit with a phone. So I don't see it. It doesn't seem likely. It have the feature that you can communicate with the satellites in an emergency, but using it for regular use, downloading YouTube videos is not going to make sense. I just don't see it. And that's not even a question of yet. It's a question of physics. The distance from the phone to the satellite, the power that's required to make it all work, it just doesn't make sense. But one of my thoughts was there's a risk that Apple tries to milk some money out of Tesla for, let's say, robotaxi revenue or other uses of the Twitter app. And maybe in order to make Twitter profitable and get Tesla to take more advantage of what it's doing, having their own phone network saves money and gives them control. I still don't think it's going to happen. I think Apple's doing pretty well on phones. I have an iPhone 14 Pro, and I'm honestly not that impressed with it. One of the things that Elon tends to do is he tends to go after industries that have stabilized and are no longer innovating in a big way. And I don't think my iPhone 14 Pro is that much better than my iPhone XR from 3+ years ago. That iPhone was pretty good. Honestly, I think the night photos were better with the iPhone XR than they are with this. This thing feels heavy in the hand. It's like it's too meaty. I don't know why it's so heavy. Battery life isn't as long as I thought it would be. Just a lot of things, like pretty disappointed in the iPhone 14 Pro. They just really didn't knock that one out of the park. And so there's an opportunity for Tesla to jump in. If Elon wanted to go that way, there's an opportunity for Elon to go that way. And all of a sudden there's a phone. And yes, SpaceX did make an arrangement with T-Mobile, so there's an argument for that as well. But if they just came out with a phone that was, comparable to an iPhone in terms of, probably it doesn't need to have the spectacular screen the iPhone has. It does, the camera can be pretty good. If it's like a good Android phone, but, it's got Tesla advantages and Twitter advantages, I could see, and if he was reasonably priced and it made Twitter work a lot better, and there's a lot of people spend a lot of time on Twitter, it could draw them. And, if it interacted better with your car, I could see that making sense. So I don't think it's going to happen, but I just wanted to address it. Yes, at some point Neuralink would get there, but Neuralink is 10 years away from that. And, Apple might be a day away from bouncing Twitter from the App Store. So it matters. Okay, so that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. I don't see, let me pop my glasses on, see if I don't see any comments there. I just had this idea in my head and I wanted to talk about it, and I thought this was a good place to do it. So I want to thank everybody for watching. Just trying to do more content on the Daily Lie. Check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. This is the Insanely Gigantic shirt. There is a daily live shirt on elonbits.com. Please check that out. Thanks everybody for watching. I just wanted to give this a shot, and I didn't think it was going to work on YouTube, so I wanted to do it here. So we'll talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.